Claimed she couldn't find bank statements that I knew she had. Demanded detailed inventories of everything in the house, down to the last spoon. Her lawyer kept sending these ridiculous settlement proposals. She wanted the house, my 401k, and still wanted alimony on top of it all. The absolute audacity of this woman who I caught cheating, asking for half my retirement savings. The most infuriating part? We'd been separated for months at this point. She was still seeing her affair partner. Yeah, I found that out through mutual friends, living her best life while deliberately trying to make mine as difficult as possible. Every time we'd get close to agreeing on something, she'd suddenly change her mind or come up with new demands. It was like she was getting some sick pleasure out of watching me waste money on legal fees. Each time Lucas had to respond to another one of her ridiculous proposals, I could practically hear her laughing all the way to her boyfriend's bedroom. While Carolyn was doing her best to drag out the divorce and drain my bank account, I tried to get back into the dating scene. Not my proudest moment, but I went through a phase of hooking up with random women from dating apps. Downloaded Tinder, Bumble, all that stuff. Had a few one-night stands, trying to convince myself that this was what moving on looked like. But every morning after felt worse than the last. Each meaningless hookup just reminded me why I'd said no when Carolyn suggested an open relationship. That lifestyle just wasn't me. I've always been the type of guy who wants to wake up next to the same person every morning, share inside jokes, and build a real connection. The whole casual sex scene made me feel empty inside, like I was trying to fill a hole with the wrong shape. I needed something else to occupy my mind besides work, divorce papers, and disappointing hookups. Before Carolyn came along and life got crazy with 60-hour work weeks and monthly screaming matches, I used to be a huge reader. Like, stay up all night to finish a book kind of reader. So one Saturday, instead of swiping through dating apps or checking my lawyer's emails, I decided to visit this little indie bookstore downtown. You know the type, creaky wooden floors, that amazing old book smell, cats sleeping in the windows. I was standing in the sci-fi section, feeling completely lost because apparently the entire genre had evolved while I was busy trying to save my marriage. I'm talking about these thick books with titles I couldn't even pronounce, series that were like 15 books long. I must have looked pretty pathetic, just staring at the shelves with this confused look on my face, because this woman next to me actually laughed, not in a mean way, just this soft, amused sound. She was holding this massive book that could have doubled as a weapon, and when I turned to look at her, she just smiled and asked if I needed help. Told her I was looking for some good sci-fi but had no idea where to start. Next thing I know, we're sitting in these comfy chairs in the corner, and she's giving me a crash course in modern science fiction. She was passionate about it too, her eyes lit up when she talked about her favorite books, and she had this adorable habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she got excited about a particular series. What started as a quick book recommendation turned into a 2-hour conversation about everything from classic Asimov to modern space operas. She told me about this series she loved about parallel universes, and I shared stories about my old favorites from college. It was the first real conversation I'd had in months that didn't involve lawyers, divorce papers, or bad Tinder pickup lines. For those 2 hours, I completely forgot about Carolyn and all the drama. I was just a guy talking about books with a beautiful woman who actually seemed interested in what I had to say. After our impromptu book club session, I finally worked up the courage to ask for her number. My hands were actually shaking while putting it in my phone, pretty pathetic for a 36-year-old man, but something about her just made me feel like a teenager again. I walked out of that bookstore with her number, her recommendation for The Three-Body Problem, and the first genuine smile I'd had in months. I kept rereading our text conversation that night, and it hit me how different it felt from all those empty Tinder messages. There was something real there. On our first real date, I knew I had to tell her about my ongoing divorce. I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head a dozen times, expecting her to run for the hills when I mentioned my psycho soon-to-be ex-wife. But Emma, yeah, that's her name, just took a sip of her wine and said, "I appreciate your honesty. We all have baggage, and at least you're dealing with yours." Just like that. No judgment, no weird looks, no awkward attempts to change the subject. She even joked that dating a guy going through a divorce meant she'd never have to wonder if he was secretly married. Emma was like the anti-Carolyn in every way. Where Carolyn would scream during arguments, Emma would calmly discuss things. Where Carolyn demanded attention, Emma gave it freely. She was genuinely interested in my work, remembered little details about things I'd mentioned weeks ago, and never once made me feel bad about my divorce situation. For the first time in years, I felt seen and heard. The best part? I wasn't even looking for her when we met. No dating apps, no setups from friends, just two people connecting over science fiction in a bookstore. You can't make this stuff up. 5 months into dating Emma, and I was falling hard. Everything felt right with her, The way she'd send me book recommendations during work, how she'd leave little notes in the books she lent me, the way she actually listened when I talked about my day. But Carolyn was still dragging out the divorce, throwing up roadblock after roadblock. Every time I thought we were close to finalizing it, she'd find some new way to delay things. Missing signatures, disputed assets, sudden remembered joint accounts, you name it, she tried it. Emma was incredibly patient through all of this. She never pressured me about the divorce or complained about being with a technically married man. She'd just hold my hand through the frustrating calls with Lucas and remind me that this too would pass. I was finally starting to feel happy again, really happy, not just pretending to be okay happy. Of course, that's exactly when everything went completely off the rails. Emma and I had just had this perfect Saturday together. We'd gotten lunch at this cute little cafe, done some shopping, and were heading back to her car in the mall parking lot. The sun was setting, and we were talking about what movie to watch that night. One second I'm listening to her laugh about something, and the next second my whole world explodes into chaos. I heard it before I saw it, this engine just screaming, like someone had floored the gas pedal. When I turned towards the sound, there was this car barreling straight at us, but mainly aiming for Emma. Pure instinct kicked in and I grabbed her arm to yank her away, but I wasn't fast enough. The car clipped her leg and I watched in horror as it just snapped. The sound of her bone breaking mixed with her scream is something that will haunt me forever. She collapsed onto the pavement, and I went down with her, trying to shield her body with mine. I had my phone out to call 911 when I heard tires screeching again. The car had smashed into another vehicle and was now backing up, engine still roaring. That's when I realized, this wasn't an accident. This driver was trying to hit us again. Emma was sobbing in pain, her leg bent at this horrible angle, and I knew if I didn't move her, we were both dead. I grabbed her under the arms and dragged her between two parked cars, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. She was crying out in pain with every movement, but I had to keep going. The car charged forward again, smashing into the vehicles we'd just been hiding between. The crash was so violent it set off every car alarm in the vicinity. By this point, people were running towards us from every direction, phones out, screaming. The whole parking lot was chaos, car alarms blaring, people yelling, Emma crying in pain next to me. That's when the driver's door opened, and I swear to God, time just stopped. Because there was Carolyn, stepping out of the car like she was arriving for a dinner party. She looked exactly like she had the last time I'd seen her at our lawyer's office, except now she had this wild look in her eyes that I'd never seen before. She was wearing the same jacket she used to wear to work, her hair done perfectly like always, looking for all the world like she hadn't just tried to murder two people in broad daylight. The complete disconnect between her normal appearance and what she'd just done made it even more terrifying. This wasn't some random road rage incident or drunk driver, this was my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had apparently been stalking us and decided that if she couldn't have me, she'd rather see me dead. And she didn't just try to kill me, she specifically aimed for Emma, who'd never done anything except make me happy again. Looking at Emma's broken leg, hearing her whimpers of pain, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about me and Carolyn anymore. She'd just tried to kill an innocent woman whose only crime was dating her soon-to-be ex-husband. I held Emma close, trying to keep her calm while also keeping one eye on Carolyn, terrified she might have a weapon or try to finish what she started. Watching Carolyn step out of that car was like watching someone transform into a monster right in front of me. This wasn't the woman I'd been married to for 6 years. This wasn't even the woman I'd caught cheating in our bed. This was something else entirely, some rage-filled creature wearing my ex-wife's face. The reality of what just happened hit me like a ton of bricks. Carolyn had actually tried to murder us. Not in a heat-of-moment thing, but in a premeditated, calculated way. She had to have followed us, waited for the right moment, and then deliberately tried to run us down in broad daylight. When she started walking toward us, her heels clicking on the pavement like some twisted countdown, I genuinely thought she was going to try to finish what the car hadn't managed to do. Her face was completely blank except for her eyes, they were burning with this intense hatred I'd never seen before, not even during our worst fights. Thank God some guy built like a linebacker grabbed her before she could reach us. Even then, she kept trying to push forward, like some rabid animal straining against a leash. I was holding Emma, trying to keep her calm and assess her injuries, but I couldn't take my eyes off Carolyn. This woman had sat across from me at countless dinners, slept next to me for 6 years, talked about having kids together, and now here she was, having just tried to murder me and my girlfriend in a shopping mall parking lot. The disconnect between those two versions of her was making my head spin. How do you process the fact that someone you once loved enough to marry had just tried to kill you? The cops showed up with their sirens blaring, followed by an ambulance. As they loaded Emma into it, she was in so much pain but still trying to smile at me to let me know she was okay. Carolyn completely lost what was left of her mind. As the officers were cuffing her, she started screaming at the top of her lungs, "It hasn't been a year and you're already walking around with that whore." The pure venom in her voice made everyone around us take a step back. Here she was, having just attempted murder in front of dozens of witnesses, and somehow in her twisted mind, she was the victim. The absolute insanity of it all hit me right then. This woman had cheated on me, in our bed, with some random guy. I literally walked in on her doing it. She's the one who broke our marriage vows, who blamed me for catching her, who dragged out our divorce just to be spiteful. And now she's screaming about betrayal while being arrested for attempted murder? The mental gymnastics were Olympic level. She destroyed our marriage by cheating, and now she was acting like I was the bad guy for moving on? Standing there in that chaotic parking lot, watching my ex-wife being stuffed into the back of a police car while still screaming obscenities, with my girlfriend's blood on my hands from where I'd tried to help her, I felt like I was living in some twisted alternate reality. The woman I'd married, who used to make me breakfast on Sundays and send me cute text messages during work, had just tried to murder 2 people in cold blood. And the craziest part? She genuinely seemed to believe she was justified in doing it, like catching her cheating somehow made me the bad guy in this story. Every time I visited Emma in the hospital, I kept expecting her to tell me it was over. I mean, who could blame her? 5 months into dating a guy, and his psychotic soon-to-be ex-wife tries to turn her into a hood ornament. That's not exactly the kind of baggage most people sign up for. Her leg was in this massive cast, she was facing months of physical therapy, and it was all because she had the misfortune of dating me. I couldn't even look her in the eye when I told her who the driver was, just stared at the hospital floor and waited for the inevitable "I can't do this anymore." But Emma? She just reached for my hand and said, "Well, at least we know she'll have plenty of time to work on her road rage in prison." She actually made a joke about it. This woman, lying in a hospital bed with pins in her leg because my ex-wife tried to murder her, was trying to make me feel better. When I asked her if she was sure she wanted to stay with me after all this, she looked at me like I was crazy. "What, you think I'm going to let her win? She's going to prison, and I'm going to walk again just fine. I'd say I'm coming out ahead in this one." The district attorney's office was all over this case like white on rice. Turns out multiple security cameras caught the whole thing in glorious HD. The footage was chilling. You could see Carolyn's car circling the parking lot first, like a shark looking for prey. Then she parked for a while, just watching us. The DA said this was crucial because it proved premeditation. She didn't just happen to see us and snap. She stalked us, waited for the perfect moment, and deliberately tried to kill Emma. They had footage of her making at least 3 passes by our location before she finally gunned it straight at us. The security footage was like something out of a horror movie. You could see the exact moment she spotted us, how she waited until we were in the perfect position, and then just floored it. The cameras caught everything: the initial hit that broke Emma's leg, Carolyn backing up for another try, me dragging Emma between the cars. The DA said it was one of the clearest cases of attempted murder she'd ever seen. No room for temporary insanity or heat of passion defenses. This was cold, calculated attempted murder, caught on multiple cameras from multiple angles. The craziest part? In the footage, you can see her checking her makeup in the rearview mirror right before she tried to kill us. Just casually fixing her lipstick like she was heading to a business meeting, not attempting a double homicide. The prosecutor said this was another nail in her coffin, showed she was completely aware and in control of what she was doing. She wasn't some woman who snapped in a jealous rage. She was someone who carefully planned to murder her ex-husband's new girlfriend, and made sure her makeup was perfect for her mugshot afterward. The whole divorce process got put on hold because apparently trying to murder your ex's new girlfriend takes precedence over splitting up the china collection. I spent months going back and forth between work, the hospital for Emma's recovery, and the courthouse. My boss was understanding at first, but after the 10th time I had to leave work for legal matters, I could tell his patience was wearing thin. I was burning through PTO like crazy, spending hours with prosecutors, and basically living at the courthouse. All because my ex-wife couldn't handle the fact that I'd moved on after she cheated. The trial itself was like watching a masterclass in how to send someone to prison. The prosecutors had this mountain of evidence that just kept growing. First, there were the security cameras, 6 different angles of Carolyn trying to turn Emma into roadkill. Then came the parade of witnesses. Seemed like everyone in that parking lot had stuck around to give statements. The soccer mom who saw the whole thing while loading groceries. The teenager who recorded it all on his phone. The retired cop who grabbed Carolyn before she could finish what she started. One after another, they all told the same story. This wasn't an accident. This was attempted murder in broad daylight. Emma was incredible on the stand. Even with her leg still in a cast, she told her story without breaking down. Described how it felt to see the car coming, the pain of her leg snapping, the terror of realizing Carolyn was coming back for another try. I had to testify too, tell the jury about finding Carolyn cheating, the divorce drama, the threatening texts, everything. Carolyn just sat there the whole time, trying to look remorseful, dabbing at her eyes with tissues. The jury saw right through it. When the verdict came back, it was guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, reckless endangerment, the works. But then came the sentencing, and that's when things got frustrating. 12 years. That's all she got. 12 years for premeditated attempted murder, and she could get out even earlier with good behavior. The judge bought her whole "I'm so sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly" act. She sat there crying about how she'd lost control and deeply regretted her actions. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking about how she checked her makeup before trying to kill us. The prosecutors tried to explain it to me: first-time offender, no prior record, showed remorse, blah blah blah. But come on, 12 years? She tried to murder 2 people in cold blood. She stalked us, planned it out, and would have tried a third time if that bystander hadn't stopped her. Emma could have died. I could have died. And Carolyn could be out in less than a decade if she plays nice in prison. The justice system's funny like that. You can try to murder someone in front of dozens of witnesses and still get less time than some guy caught with drugs. But you know what really got me? During the sentencing, Carolyn actually had the nerve to turn to us and apologize, saying she wasn't herself that day. As if there's ever a version of yourself where it's okay to try and murder people in a parking lot. Emma just stared her down the whole time, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a response. 12 years might not be what we hoped for, but at least it meant 12 years where we didn't have to look over our shoulders in parking lots. Funny how attempting murder really changes a judge's perspective on alimony. After the criminal trial, the divorce proceedings suddenly became incredibly simple. Carolyn had to attend via video link from prison, looking fantastic in her orange jumpsuit. Her lawyer tried to argue for some of my assets, but the judge shut that down real quick. Turns out judges aren't super sympathetic to spouses who try to murder their ex's new partners. The judge actually said, and I quote, "The court isn't in the business of rewarding attempted murderers with alimony." She got exactly what she came into the marriage with: her clothes, her personal items, and her prison commissary account. The look on her lawyer's face when the judge denied every single one of their requests was priceless. No alimony, no share of my 401k, no claim to the house, nothing. All those months she spent dragging out the divorce, all those ridiculous demands and delayed meetings, and in the end, she played herself. If she hadn't tried to turn Emma into a speed bump, she might have actually gotten something in the divorce. Instead, she got a prison cell and divorce papers that basically said you get nothing. I couldn't stay in that apartment though, too many memories of walking in on her with that guy. Every time I walked through that bedroom door, I'd see them there. Emma and I found this great place closer to downtown. It's actually way nicer than my old apartment, has this amazing view of the city, and most importantly, no ghost of my cheating ex-wife haunting the bedroom. Emma has fully recovered now, you can barely tell her leg was ever broken. She jokes that getting hit by a car was totally worth it because it got rid of my crazy ex forever. Dark humor, but hey, whatever helps you cope with almost being murdered, right? Sometimes I wonder if I could have avoided all this. Maybe I should have seen the red flags when she started picking fights over nothing. Maybe I should have run for the hills when she refused to continue couples therapy. But honestly, crazy doesn't always wave a big red flag. Sometimes it hides behind a beautiful smile and whispered "I love yous" until one day it tries to murder your girlfriend in a parking lot. At least now I can say I'm genuinely happy. Emma and I are talking about getting married next spring. Seems fitting since we met over science fiction books and now we're living our own crazy story with a happy ending. Sure, Carolyn will get out eventually, but that's what restraining orders are for. Plus, Emma's dad is a gun instructor and made sure we both got our concealed carry permits. Just in case Carolyn decides to try for round 2 when she gets out. For anyone dealing with divorce or crazy exes, document everything, keep your guard up, and maybe avoid mall parking lots. And if you're dating someone new after a divorce, maybe do a background check first. Or at least make sure they're not the type to try and murder people over a breakup. Thanks for reading my crazy story, Reddit. Looking forward to reading all your comments, especially the car puns. Emma's personal favorite is "Guess your ex-wife really drove that relationship into the ground." P.S. Yes, Emma and I still shop at that bookstore. No, we don't park in that mall anymore.